Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Jessica. So fun to talk to you today.
Yeah, great to talk with you too. I remember when we last sunk up, you were in the process of getting ready to move. Did you move?
We are still in that process. We are
Okay.
taking the joyful route, which means going step by step and no rush. We're sort of cohabitating there and here at the moment, and we'll make the final move probably in the next few months.
Okay, cool. And so where is here and there?
I am currently in South Florida, where I've lived for the last
hmm
30 years, most of my
hmm
adult life. And we're moving to New York's beautiful Hudson Valley, which is only about an hour
Wow.
away from where I grew up. So
Wow.
it's kind of a return back to where I came.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. I remember so you and I connected through Noah, but we had like a pre-interview talk and one of the first things that we spoke about was your move. And I shared with you how I had upended my own life and of 20 years. So not
Oh,
30 years.
right.
That was 20 years in the Bay Area. And and we had been talking about self-trust related to that, right? And kind of connecting with that sense of how do I know this is the right move? And so
Yes.
I'd love just to begin because we're going to be talking about joy, but it's all connected, isn't it?
All connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you experiencing your self-trust at this moment connected to your move?
I would say this is a huge testament to self-trust
Yes.
because the pros and cons lists aren't really making this look like the right
Yeah.
thing. I've spent 30 years building community here, building my business
Mhm.
here to just go starting fresh at 61. I'm 61 years old. So there's not a lot of sense to be made of what we're doing. It just really, really feels like an inner calling that both of us are feeling, my husband and I, that we can't ignore.
Thank goodness that you're both feeling it. That that was the challenge for me is that he wasn't quite at that place yet.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I had to kind of reel him in and kind of basically insist that this was the right move for both of us. And that inhabiting that sense of um, inner knowing and self trust, despite the opposition that kept coming at me from him, that went on for a long time. And so I feel like, in a weird way, I kind of got. I was like bulletproof, like the song. Like like it really, like I'm like, wow, I'm really working this muscle. I'm really working this muscle. I'm really working this muscle. And so, I feel like over time, I just really, I trust myself a lot more because of that move.
So I
So
was trying to say
how
sometimes that's the kind of gift that the universe gives us is just like, let's really put this to the test and show your own consciousness that you can trust in tough circumstances.
yeah, like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You do know what you're doing. And that's tricky though with intuition, right? Because intuition is that beyond logic.
Yeah.
It's knowing, it's inner knowing. And so how do you experience that? Just curious in your being and in your body. How do you experience that sense of I know that this is the right direction for me to be heading in?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a
Mm.
big part of what we do in Joy School, actually, because Joy
Okay.
School is very much geared toward honoring and acknowledging and building a relationship with our soul self. So to
Mhm.
recognize the voice of the soul self when we usually have a lot of competing voices going on up there, right?
Mhm.
And the brain is just a computer, right? So any voices that
Mhm.
are coming from our brain, it's just programming that got in there from parents or culture or society or religion. Who knows what puts those different programs in our brain? But when we're relying on our brain to help us, all it can do is regurgitate one of those programs that it's been programmed with. Whereas our soul, of course, doesn't have that limitation. So to me, the difference comes down to really the voice of our inner knowing is always the simple voice, right? It doesn't have all those bells and whistles. It doesn't have the rationalizations and the pros and cons lists and all those details. When I start getting really bogged down with details, I know that's my brain trying to piece together something, right? The voice of the soul is so subtle, so still consistent. And it's always integrity, right? When there's like a really fun, juicy path over here that we're trying to talk ourselves into might be the right path. And the soul's like, no, actually, this time the harder path. It is the voice of integrity, the voice that if you lean into it, you'll feel better on the other end, even if it's showing you a harder path or not as much fun as what your brain is trying to convince you is the right path. That's the easiest way to distill it. It's the very simple, very clear, very straightforward and consistent.
I mean, isn't that true about like when you talk about spiritual truths, right? And they're like, Indigo Girl song, the hardest to learn is the least complicated. It's always like the least complicated. It's always like the simple, it's like the yes. It's right. It's the yes, not the to-do list. And then it's also, for me, listening to that intuition in my body, the intuition of the soul knowing, which transcends thought. It actually is, even when I'm moving towards something that feels new or uncomfortable, I notice that in my body, I will always feel a little bit more peace. Like it would just be this kind of ease of this slight ease, even if it's like, oh, this is new. It's almost like, how they say the truth will set you free. Like it's like you get into this like, oh, there is a freedom there. Even if it feels edgy, even if I didn't want to hear it, even if that truth is new to me, there is a peace and a freedom. There's something below the thoughts that I always felt really useful to anchor into when the thoughts get really thoughty.
It's a beautiful way to express it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you anchor into your intuition and into your soul knowing when the world gets loud? Because, the world is loud.
Yeah. I feel like when the loudness of the world is tugging at, which I am not immune to at all. I'm very, very easily affected by some issues in the collective right now. I think the way that I am able to sort of step into it most effectively is to recognize if I'm angry, triggered by social injustice, if I'm feeling protective of marginalized groups or something that's going on, what that really is love, right? If I didn't have love and compassion for that marginalized group or for the victims of what's going on, then I wouldn't be so triggered. I wouldn't have the anger. So when I recognize that they can both coexist, I can have authentic feelings of anger. And I've had to really work in my journey to be okay with my anger and to know that it's all right to feel anger. That was something that was very repressed in me early on. So to recognize that my anger is love, and it's out of love that I'm going to make sure that I vote and advocate and march. And when I recognize that I'm doing this out of love rather than anger, it makes me more calm and effective around it.
That is such a beautiful awareness. It kind of reminds me of like a fierce mama bear energy, where that the mama bear is just being fierce because she just wants to protect. And I think as women, we feel that a lot. We protect, we care, we love. And it's a nice reframe too on fear, because anger can just be that. It's fear of not being able to, right? Like anger is fear of not being able to show love, or fear of not being able to be there and show up for the vulnerable, or, so it can flip into that fear really easily, right? The fear and love.
Helplessness. Yeah. The fear to me has a feeling of helplessness when faced with, current circumstances. Yeah.
But if you kind of embody that love energy and just bring that in, it really can shift that almost like into a righteous anger that is rooted rather than flying off the handle. Yeah.
I love that you called it mama bear energy. I'm sure that's a case for a lot of people in the country. It's like very, very much so specifically the case for me. I have a transgender daughter, so it's very much a mama bear energy when I'm feeling it activated. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that for sure. And just on the flip side, I totally want to talk about you and your transgender daughter and this amazing book you wrote, because I feel like it's important to highlight this. But I wanted to say too, on the flip side of activism, and sometimes it's an act of love to step back from the energy, from the fighting, from getting activated, depending on how sensitive you are. I know that I can just basically be rendered ineffective if I open up to that energy. So I think that there's a place for love in both showing up on the front lines and also showing up for ourselves, and kind of navigating that line.
It's a long game. It's not a short game. So you're absolutely right. You're not going to win a marathon by sprinting full out right from the get-go. You have to take care of yourself. You have to rest. You have to know when you have the resources to spare and when you don't. And when you don't, you recoup. You regroup and you trust somebody else to carry the baton while you're resting. Absolutely. We're no good. I mean, it's almost a strategy, right? The flood the zone strategy. The powers that be are hoping that we exhaust ourselves. And you can't do that. You have to take care of yourself so that you can be there for the long game.
But even the mama bears have to go in and hibernate. Yeah. And so, it's like trusting that we're all here for each other and we're all connected in that greater web of love.
Yeah.
Speaking to that, so this wonderful book that you wrote early on in your career, it sounds like, what led you to write this beautiful book that has, it sounds like, been like this bolstering support for loving new humans unconditionally, giving kind of parents a sense of how to do this, thing, because like so many people now are awakening to, the fact that we're all so different. Right. And it may be more important than ever to nourish the soil right from the beginning, to let everybody know that we're here for you no matter what. And you're beautiful. So tell me how you found yourself in that moment writing this book that is life-changing for a lot of people.
You're going way back in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had fallen in love with practical spirituality early on. I wasn't a happy child or young person. I had circumstances that would not lead one to be a naturally joyful person, as is the case for very, very, very many of us. And I always I studied Buddhism and comparative religion in college, and just from there it was just such a hunger for spiritual material, practical spirituality that's the psychology spiritual blend that's so popular. And I was still very much in my learning stages with all of that when I became pregnant with my first child, and it had become so apparent to me that it's that lack of feeling unconditionally loved that causes so many of us to store the energies and samskaras and doubt that manifest later in life as the problems that we show up with. So I just was so determined, I'm going to make sure that my children know they are absolutely unconditionally loved no matter what. And, I was around a lot of kids and I saw the sorts of tantrums and things that I felt like would normally potentially be an issue in the family where the child might not feel loved in every situation. And just really thinking about those things, I wrote a playful book that I wanted to be sure and bring my children up on, to let them know, no matter what, you are just so loved by me. And that was I Love You, Stinky Face, which struck a chord and was a huge bestseller for the company right off the bat. So over the 30 years since then, it's had 10 sequels with the same mother and child character. And it's just a little dialogue between
Wow.
the mother and child. But really, I think it was Publishers Weekly that wrote that this is the gold standard for expressing unconditional love to your child, something like that. And I think that's I was surprised how many parents would write to me and say, "Thank you for giving me a way to show unconditional love to my child." I was like, "Oh, that's sort of weird. Like,
Mm.
I hope you have other ways too." Like,
We all have our skills, yeah? Yeah. Oh, wow.
so
That's
that
so
was that
beautiful.
first book. And as the way,
Mhm.
the universe is, that the child that was in my belly when I wrote the book is my now beautiful transgender daughter. So it actually became a
Oh.
bit of an anthem in the LGBTQ community because it is 30
Mhm.
years old. So a
Uh-huh.
lot of kids came up on it. It had sold, millions of copies right from the start. So there are a lot of kids out there who are at the age of coming out to their parents. And I get heartbreaking messages about, I found out the limits of my parents' love. I was
Mhm.
read that book, but it turned out not to be true, meaning that,
Mhm.
that the parents have not taken it well to coming out.
Have you found an increase in the amount of mail over the past, let's see, when was this published? When was your original?
97?
When?
97?
1997? Yeah. Wow. So you're heading into 30 years almost. Wow. So have you noticed like spikes? And um I just think like the last maybe decade like has just felt really like people are expressing. Have you noticed that?
Not really. I mean,
Not really. It's
I've been
constant.
blessed that it stayed in print all this time. That's super,
Mhm.
super rare. But it's definitely been, it's like a slow progression of less and less since the release date, which is normal. So no, I can't really say. But maybe that's part of what's kept it in print. It's just that it has
Mhm.
that sort of newly timely application.
Mhm. Oh, I just hope there's more tolerance now. I really, at the very least, I mean, I feel like there's been more coming out. I do hope that there's more tolerance and that has shifted over the decades.
I would love to
Think-
say yes, but I feel like that's
You
not
don't know.
actually the case. Well,
Mhm.
I live
Oh,
in South Florida and I'm a PFLAG
yeah.
president. So I counsel families with trans kids
Okay.
in particular. Luckily the parents who freak out about their kids being gay, that has improved significantly. That there's like
Okay.
hardly any
Good.
parents freaking out about that anymore. Now
Thanks for the good
everybody's
news.
freaking out
Yeah.
about having a trans child. And that
Okay.
has definitely gotten much worse since
Okay.
the current administration's been saying the things that they say about trans people. That's
Yeah.
been
Wow. Sheesh. Well, let's hope that that changes too, as all things will change one way or another, right? They do change. So you're doing wonderful work in this regard. You also have something called Joy School, which you mentioned earlier. Um, I want to know what joyful things you're doing in your life today. Like, where are you getting joy right now?
oh, okay. Well, the move has been pretty all encompassing. I have to
Yeah,
tell you,
I
this
know.
was like right transition. Um, and I feel like it's really been just a series of transitions my whole life. It's just been like one thing that seems hard and exciting, and then it levels off, and then it's the next thing that's hard and exciting. So that's really the Hudson Valley is absolutely going to be perfect for my husband and I. My trans daughter and her partner live there, and that's part of
Cool.
a big part of why we're going in that direction. But I'm very excited about that. I've always had the online Joy School, and I've always
Mhm.
done retreats and workshops at my home here in South
Okay.
Florida, or retreats at venues, retreat venues, but a lot of workshops and one day sort of retreats at my home. So in the Hudson Valley, we'll have a brick and mortar center, which will be
Mhm.
really fun
Sweet.
to sort of
Yeah.
expand into the live in-person events and gatherings. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that. And that's where most of my joyful focus is.
Okay.
But if you meant
So
more about like modalities, because I'm a modality junkie, I've learned all the different ways to move energy, all the different different modalities for elevating vibration. And the one that I'm most excited about lately that we've been doing in Joy School is moving energy vocally, which is singing and
Oh.
kirtan and chanting. And it's just a very ancient,
Oh.
tried and true understanding about that's one avenue for moving stuck energies within us, and it massages the vagus nerve, which tells us that we're safe. And it's just been really fun to explore. I always have to have like some new thing that I'm exploring, so that's the most recent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. So I was thinking you were going to answer first the intention you're holding for your move, because I can feel that. That's a real source of joy when we hold an intention for a dream, for a positive outcome that can feel really palpable. And then there's this other aspect to joy, which is like the daily, how do we experience daily joy? Like when so much is changing, or like you said, there's transition after transition after transition, that it can be hard. We can lose our focus. For me, like I'll continually like, oh wait, I forgot to do an artist date. Like an artist date has been something that's in my kind of toolkit for a long time, from Julia Cameron, The Artist's
Mm.
Way. You're probably familiar. But that's where you kind of essentially take yourself out on a play date.
Yeah.
And so that reminded me too. So two things. So I forget. I forget joy, and I have to remember. And I'm sure you're familiar with that. And that's part of the exploration. But also that reminded me of your kind of play dates that you advocate. And you call them not homework,
Oh,
but
home play is
home
like this?
play,
Yeah.
right? Where you kind of bring in new experiential tools that you experiment with and just see, hey, can this raise my vibration? Does this do anything for me? And I am such a huge advocate of those types of things. So do you want to talk about that a little bit, and how your home play relates to kind of the trajectory of cultivating a sustainable sense of joy in the everyday?
Yeah, for sure. We always say it's like you can go to all the retreats, you can listen to the podcasts and the YouTube channels and read the
Mhm.
books, and all the learning in the world is a great first step. But until you're doing it, until you're applying what you've learned, what you've taken into your life, nothing's going to change. It's just like
Yep.
I've learned that the hard way. I was just a learning junkie for years and years and years and years and years. I felt like I've learned so much. How could nothing have changed? It's in the application that we make progress, that we evolve to the next level. So that's the key to the home play. In my most recent book, Free Your Joy, every concept is accompanied by a week's worth of, okay, bring this into your life, bring this into your life, bring this into your life. But before I talk about daily joy, I just want to say how we define joy in Joy School is
Mhm.
not equivalent to happiness. Really, joy
Right.
is the acceptance, the complete understanding and acceptance of the full spectrum of emotions, that every single one of them is perfectly okay and beautiful. And it's what our little souls signed on for, right? There's nobody who thinks that this Earth journey is going to be all sunshine and rainbows. We know that's not the case. It's fraught
Mhm.
with potential disasters and heartbreak, and these fragile human forms are very likely to fall apart in various ways, and the ones that we love are going to have things fall apart. This is the human journey, and all
Mhm.
of us opted in, right? All of us opted to feel all of the emotions. But early on, we get conditioned that there are certain ones that we want to feel and others that we don't want to feel. And then for a lot of us in our young, tender years, when we're learning how to be here, there are circumstances that bring up more emotion than we can comfortably process. And when that
Yeah.
happens, our bodies know what to do, and our bodies store those emotions away until we gain some years, some emotional maturity. And it's incumbent upon us, once we do have some greater capacity, some greater emotional maturity, to pay attention to learning how to process those feelings. So joy is an umbrella emotion in Joy School that when we're fully accepting and compassionate around our own anger, around our own fear, around our own judgments, there's a quality of joy to all of those emotions. So going through a day in joy doesn't mean going through a day all happy, not having any of those other feelings. It's being okay with all of the feelings, knowing how to hold it and how to give ourselves compassion around it. And that would be like kind of just a foundational piece for how to live in.
Absolutely. Thank you for explaining that. That's really helpful to know the definition of joy. It kind of feels like a deeper way of holding life that, like you said, we're here to have this experience, which is going to run the gamut. And if we limit ourselves from having the experiences that are definitely going to happen, we also limit the joy that we can experience, right? And so it's by moving through and to kind of allowing and embracing and accepting and finding a place within it that we discover joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I really resonate with what you teach and who you are. I could tell that right away when we initially connected. Because I don't know who said it first, but it was, we are already peace, joy, bliss, acceptance, allowance, grace. We are already all of these things. We've just kind of forgotten, or we are in a process of remembering. And I think we both really, really deeply practice that in our lives.
Right. That
Yeah.
is our natural state. That's our soul self. And every person walking the planet has one. Nobody came in without a soul. And that's where we came from. We came from pure love and grace and compassion. And that's what each of us has as our core being. And anything that makes us present otherwise is one of those brain programs that got installed, is something that was learned in our earth journey that can be unlearned and can be processed into release.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the tools, that's where we bring in the tools, these kind of experiential tools that allow us to try new things with in a spirit of play. I find that's really important. Because a lot of people are afraid of change, or I wouldn't even say sometimes it's a conscious thing. But there's a certain comfort level with where we are. There's a certain discomfort with where we want to be. And
even if where we are feels like crap, there's there's a tug of, I'm in a crappy mood, and that's just where I'm familiar and comfortable right now. Don't make me do this thing. I want to and that's okay too, when we recognize it, when we're like cognizant of it, and all right, I'll give it an hour. If I just need to
that can be a really compassionate awareness. We can give ourselves some love around that. But then when it becomes like the groove and the broken record, these kind of well, what if, asking the question, well, what if I tried XYZ? What if instead of, sitting in front of the TV and or whatever the equivalent is for disconnection, what if I tried a practice that would allow me to connect a little more deeply to my soul? And I did it in a spirit of curiosity and very lighthearted. Not holding on too tight to a result, right? And just see what happens. I think that opens the doorway for a lot of things. So maybe you could talk about that. Your school.
Yeah. I mean, what are the basic first practices if your audience wanted to, just start this journey that we always do with a new Joy School program, is to actually check in, have intervals throughout the day. If you're really ambitious, you could check in once an hour. If you don't want to go that far, you could just set your alarm, to go off 3 times during the day, and just be really honest about, what am I feeling? What am I feeling right now? We tend to suppress feelings, deny feelings, put feelings aside, and just really, really see what's there. And this is where we start to build that understanding that we are all soul and human both. There's the two components. We call it the vertical self and the horizontal self in Joy School. That's terminology I borrowed from Eckhart Tolle decades ago. He doesn't even use those terms anymore, but he used to. And so our horizontal self is the human that's living here, operating from the brain programming, operating from all our conditioning. And of course, the vertical self is the soul self that every one of us has. So when we check in with our feelings, we're already becoming the observer of ourselves. That's a Buddhist practice, the witness consciousness. When we're observing ourselves, we've sort of shifted into that duality, right? There's an observer and an observer. So when we're there to build the skill of just whatever is there, whatever frustration, whatever fear, whatever anxiety is going on, just being so compassionate from the soul to the human, so compassionate around what's being felt. This is what loosens up those samskaras and allows them to generally be digested little by little, right? In a concentrated way. So it's just checking in, what am I feeling? And then allowing ourselves to give ourselves compassion around it, to hold space for ourselves. In our Joy School groups, we hold space for one another, but we can do it just with ourselves. And then, maybe a few simple questions like, darling, what do you want? Darling, what do you need? I like to encourage terms of endearment, from the soul self to the human self. And sometimes, we don't ask ourselves what we need. Maybe we just need to open the window and get some fresh air. Maybe we need to close our eyes for 2 minutes to recalibrate before we go face our, so that's just like a very basic preliminary practice that we can do.
I think that is excellent. I mean, that is something that I learned early on, to ask the question, what do I need? Well, first you're checking in, right? First you're like, well, how am I feeling? Right? But you can also just go, what do I need? What do I need? What do I want? Just giving yourself that permission to acknowledge and meet a need. With the human, like, I need a drink of water. I happen to need lots of liquids. I notice I'm always drinking on the podcast. I always have liquids. But, I like that. I like being able to ask, what is it I need? What is it I want? And then to take the step to do whatever that is. It builds this congruence and safety, I find, for the human, where the nervous system gets to relax. Your parasympathetic starts to be like, I'm not worried that you're going to ignore me anymore, that you're going to be walking around like body without head or head without body. And then as you start doing a better job of taking care of that human self, that the soul self, I feel can step forward a little bit more.
For sure. And sometimes the answer to the question is going to be something that we can't immediately give ourselves, right? Sometimes what I need is to not be in this job, or, just as an example, something like that. But just checking in regularly and noticing that need is there and giving it compassion and giving it validation, giving it, witness is what, as we know, opens the energy to start seeing possibilities for that thing to come into our life, right?
And if you cannot quit your job, like just asking, like, what do I need in this moment? Okay, I may not, of course I want to quit my job, whatever, but what do I need and want in this moment? Like, you can always make progress. You can always, and I think that there can be a core disempowerment for those big questions, if I can name that. Like, because I was in a situation where I could not quit my job for a long time. And of course, what do I want? I want to quit my job. What do I need? I need to not be here, right? And that was true for a while. That was true for me. But what was also true with Zero, there's also a variety of needs and desires that I could also take some steps on. So just to point that out, because it's like a muscle, like satisfying yourself. And it often doesn't take big steps. The brain tends to think, I need to make this big leap. But in truth,
sorry, it choked a little.
Yeah.
I think I'm better.
In truth, it can be more of I need to take a walk.
Yeah.
And that walk's going to clear my head enough to help me get through this day.
Yeah.
So just, the macro and the micro. I like to make my steps. When I can't do the big ones, I'll do smaller ones until I can do the big ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is such a really, I think, a timely conversation to talk about, getting kind of opening up what joy actually is and how we could just start opening to that in ourselves by doing these check-ins with what I want and what I need. And as we've mentioned, the world is in such a strange place, and potentially can rob us of our joy if we're not aware that, hey, this is a really unique experience that has a lot of color to it and a lot of possibilities. How do you help people, whether you're working in Joy School or working within yourself, kind of re-anchor back into that knowing? Knowing that this whole, even when it feels bad over here, even when it's not going great over there, is it just like inviting in the feelings? How do you get back to that baseline of just like, I'm good?
Yeah. We work with the David Hawkins scale. Some enjoy the vibrational scale. Excuse me, I don't know what happened to my voice.
I'm drinking water for you.
So. I know, right?
I'm half water to your throat.
It's all fine. All fine.
All good.
But very often just pulling back, because when we're in anxiety, when we're in the throes of it, we're usually hyper-focused, so we're able to pull back that focus. You can do exercises where you look at other times in your life that you felt this way, and then, in hindsight, you see that it was leading you to something, that opened up a new door or somehow changed you in a positive way. There are ways to work with it that way. I think that most of our practices involve identifying and shoring up that identity as the vertical self. And when we do that, it's almost like there's an analogy I use sometimes of a toddler with a ice cream cone, and the ball of ice cream rolls off the cone and goes splat on the sidewalk, and the toddler is just inconsolable, wailing, it's the end of the world. How could something so absolutely horrible have happened? You want to imagine being the good parent of the toddler who's going to go right down there and meet the toddler where he is and give him all this compassion and love, because you can see that this seems very terrible for the child. But at the same time, the parent knows there are many more ice cream cones in this child's. Nothing really horrible is going to come of this situation. We're going to be off playing with toys in another, few minutes, and going to go to bed tonight like nothing happened. So the parent has that understanding, even though they're going to meet the toddler there and give them comfort and give them space to work out that emotion. And that is how our souls see every bad thing that happens to us, whether it's the lost job or the lost spouse or the lost money or the health crisis. Our souls see it like the ball of ice cream rolling off the cone onto the sidewalk. And when we can step into identification with that part of us and comfort the human part, understanding, this feels really crappy and I'm really, really like emoting over this. Okay, that's okay. And then just hold that space and that compassion and that understanding that this is a human life. This is happening to millions of people right now, and a lot worse things, whatever you're going through, is happening to millions of people right now. This is what we came here for, to get better at accepting that this whole gamut of experience is going to take place.
Get better at accepting that the ice cream will roll off your cone at one point or several points. And I love that analogy, and I guess it's you being, I don't know, a children's author, but like instantly I'm just like, I remembered the first time I experienced that right when you said it. And it was my favorite ice cream at the time was pink bubblegum. And I'm wearing pink today. It was pink bubblegum, like this like crazy Baskin Robbins. And like, why would I have that memory? It's such out of all the things you can remember or forget in childhood, right? I remember that pink ball rolling off of my cone and just like the tragedy of it.
It's tragic. At that point in time in your life, that is the end of the world.
But you know what? I got another cone. And I think my grandma got me one right afterwards. So it's kind of like the soul, right? The soul swooping in like, yes, you can cry. And now here's your money to go get your other cone, your new ice cream. I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. So is there anything you'd like to like wind up our call with today? Tell us about well, definitely tell us how to get in touch with you, which that's going to be in the show description, all of your contact info, but anything you're doing that you think we should know about, and parting words about joy.
Well, everything that I do is at my website, which is just my name, lisamccourt.com. And I do ceremonies. I'm really excited to build that up more at my new location in Hudson Valley. I do workshops, retreats. It's all a little bit on hold at the moment. I have a series that I was doing with Scott Stabile and Karen Samuelson that's a little bit on hold, a free monthly event, just an online, come share, space with us and let us give you some tools. So that's on hold. It's still a bit of a transition moment, but we will be putting a lot more on the calendar in the coming months.
Well, cool. So we'll keep in touch with you, and maybe we'll do this again when you're in your new space. And I did recall like reading that you're a celebrant, and that is so cool. So what that means is you preside over ceremonies, life, death, things like this, like an officiant.
Yeah, it's something that I always like wanted to do and finally just started being asked and realized, okay, it's time to step into that more. I love helping to create a meaningful ceremony, ritual, whatever you want to call it, around life milestones. It's just it's been a real joy and honor.
That's beautiful. I've been an officiant too. I've wedded people. It's just there's nothing like that. Well, I mean, you've been. It's kind of that spiritual vortex, right? It's like you've. I mean, I read that you used to sing in choir, and it's just just holding that space for something really beautiful and pure. There's nothing quite like it. So I can see you doing really well with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing your joyful spirit to this podcast today. I really did enjoy this conversation, and it would be nice maybe to talk again.
I would love that. I've enjoyed it very much. I love what your work is. I haven't gotten to read your book yet, but thank you for sending it. I'm looking forward to that. And I'd love to be in touch.
Yeah, I sent you the Venus Signs, which is one of my works. I have several, but just like knowing that we were going to touch on joy today, that's also one of my angles. Like joy and pleasure through the archetype of Venus, and so connecting with that aspect of yourself that is open to pleasure and receiving and joy and bliss, and what is it that creates those yummy conditions. So I'll look forward to hearing what you say.
Yeah, no, that sounds beautiful. I love that
Okay.
one. That's great.
Good. Okay. Good luck. Good luck in your move.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
Goddess speed. Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.